Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. Those interviews are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to competitive teams, racers, rock crawlers, business owners, employees, media, and private park owners, men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active and off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low Magazine is a magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in a storefront or on a bookshelf, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Tom Yash. Tom has been in the industry for quite a while. We'll find out exactly how long, but I met Tom, I believe, the first time sometime back in the mid-2000s when he was working for JKS, I believe. So, Tom, thank you very much for coming on board and talking about your history, and it's great to have you on here.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks for having me.
So let's jump right in, and, where were you born and raised?
I was actually born in Youngstown, Ohio. Pretty sad city, so sad. Springsteen wrote a song about it. Grew up in the area, basically have lived in Lake Milton for most of my life, but bounced around, went to college in Athens, Ohio, lived in Nebraska, Boston, New York. So been a little bit everywhere, and for about 5 years, I lived on the road.
Well, for me, as a San Francisco 49er fan, since I can remember first understanding what football was.
Oh, yeah.
D. Bartolo owning the 49ers was like the greatest thing ever. Did a great job, and he's from Youngstown.
Yeah, the DeBartlos, yeah. They're still got the 49ers logo on the side of their building here.
Excellent. So then, primarily, where did you go to school and stuff? Was it Youngstown or?
No, yeah, going to Jackson Milton, it was a real small town. So I think we have a total of 2 stoplights in our town. Graduating class is about 50 people. And that was the biggest in, I think, 10 years was my graduating class. And then right after that, I went to college at Ohio University, where I think my freshman class was, over 1,400 people or something like that. So it was a pretty big jump in a different direction. It was a lot of fun, though.
So when you were in high school, the question I got to ask, were you studious, athletic, or did your own thing?
Yes, it was. So I was a problem child probably up until about 6th grade, and then I had one teacher call me a hammerhead, which it stuck with me, and I was like, I'm not dumb. Come on. And after that, I applied myself more and actually just paid attention in class and realized if you did that, you get good grades. So I did well with that. I was, my senior class student council president. I started the golf team. My parents unfortunately got stuck with doing football, baseball, wrestling, track, and eventually golf. So there wasn't a free moment of space to get a breath of air in anywhere.
And I know you have a brother because you raced with him, and we'll get into that. Is he older or younger?
Older, 1 year older. He's my co-driver, yeah.
Okay. And was that town, if it's that small, it must have been fairly rural? Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, our football team would diminish once the students got old enough that the parents wanted them to come back and work on the farm. So like up until about sixth grade, we were dynamite. We would beat everybody around, and then seventh and eighth grade, all of those farmers would have to go back and work on their farms, and we'd lose all that muscle.
Wow. Okay. Yep. That happens. And as a kid, riding bikes, motorcycles, what was your thing for outdoors?
I was just that. Like, so we were, bikes was a way of life. We lived so far away from everybody else that you'd have to ride a bike to go see the neighbor, and that was a good pedal. So, there was times where you'd, be riding 5 miles just to go see a friend, then you'd have to ride 5 miles back, and you didn't have a cell phone, and thankfully, our parents weren't hovering at that point, so we were allowed to go out and explore. And I grew up next to a golf course, so we were always causing havoc there and looking for golf balls and being chaotic there. But yeah, eventually, you grow up and you buy some bigger toys. I think I was 14 when I bought my three-wheeler, ATC 350X. So I bought the biggest, fastest three-wheeler I could find that they ever made. And I just remember like my mom crying and having to promise them I'd get a helmet. And yeah, it was just chaos after that ever since. And basically the next year I was starting to buy Jeeps and cars and everything else, and it just snowballed to where I'm at right now.
And so while you were in school, or did this happen at home, how'd you gain mechanical aptitude?
I was a challenge. So both my grandparents, mother's side, father's side, were mechanics. One worked for a local bakery here, Schwabel's Bakery, doing fleet maintenance there. My other grandfather did fleet maintenance for Holly's Soda Pop, which is more regional here. And my father growing up saw what his father went through and my mother's father, and he's like, I don't want my kids to be mechanics. So he really wouldn't show us much but like the absolute basics. It was you get oil change and you hold a flashlight maybe once in a while. But when I got into high school, we had, once again, like you said, it was a rural area, so we had the FFA program, and our FFA program also was a welding shop. So immediately I was drawn to that, and I spent as much time as I could doing that while working at the golf course that was right down the road that I used to get in trouble at. So couple that with my neighbors being farmers and them needing help, it's the joke that when you run into people from rural towns, it's like, oh, what age did you start driving? And it's like 13, 12, 11. And it was the same thing. I'd go over to my neighbor's house when he would get stuck, hop on his tractor, go down to the field, pull him out. And he used to joke, I was a chauffeur, as a 60-year-old man, and I'm driving around in his truck in town, and like the neighbors are freaking out, and he's like, no, he's a good kid. So, unfortunately for my father and family, we fell right into the trap of mechanics and automotive, and if it made noise and went fast, we were trying to to crawl on it.
So you worked at a golf course.
Yeah.
From what age?
I believe I started when I was 12.
12. Okay.
Yeah.
And what did you do at the golf course?
It was grunt labor at first. So, pushing around a lawnmower, weed whacking, emptying trash cans. So they put me on a golf cart, and that was, the happiest day of my life. And then, within a few years, I remember the one day the boss came over and he's like, who knows how to drive stick or standard? And I was like, and I raised my hand, and nobody else did. I'm working with guys that are like 20, 30 years old, and I'm the only one that knew how to drive stick. And he's like, are you serious? And I'm like, I can run the loader too. He's like, if you want, I'll just drive the dump truck up here, fill it up. And ever since then, after that day, I didn't have to do nearly as much grunt labor, and it was a lot easier.
Okay. See, all you young guys and women out there that are listening, that you need to learn how to drive a stick.
Oh, it 100% paid off. I was the little kid in the cab listening to the radio, working the tilt bed while they were in the back, shoveling after we were doing some tar and scratch. So that made my summer way better.
That's awesome. So working at a golf course, was it like Caddyshack?
Yes, 100%. They're like the 19th hole was the place to be after work. So you'd get into work at 5:30. You typically would work till, around noon or so. And then you'd basically sit there and wait for a group to go out golfing with. And then you'd start gambling and the drinks would come out. And it was just, and then I would basically go home to get something to eat, come back, do the watering, and then, you know, go home and fall asleep and repeat.
And so that allowed a job like that allowed you to be able to afford the three wheeler and then
Oh
getting
yeah,
into
yeah,
trucks and jeeps and stuff.
yeah, and it afforded a lot of the other chaos, and that's where like a lot of the mechanical abilities and understanding actually spawned from too. So, the owner knew that I kind of enjoyed that, and when golf carts would break, he would show me some things and teach us, and eventually I started becoming like the backup to help fix and repair a lot of the golf carts. And eventually I bought my own golf cart because I was golfing entirely too much. 36 holes a day was normal, and having a lift kit, tires, wheels, stereo, all of that on a golf cart, being this little punk kid, was pretty fun as
Wow.
well.
Did you take it out
Yeah.
on dates?
Oh, it's surprising with what it would attract. Yeah.
So you're growing up. You're working on the golf course. You got an ATC, and then you say you're
Yep.
working into vehicles. What was the first vehicle?
Uh, so I consider it like kind of a tie. I was gifted our family 1980 Monte Carlo, and that was my father's, like he purchased that car brand new, and I believe my aunt had owned it for a while, and then my godfather had owned it, and then it kind of made the full circle back, and I drove it for a little bit. But officially, the one that I purchased, I still call my first car, and that was a '76 CJ5, 304 fiberglass body, four-wheel disc brake or drum brakes. Sorry, no power steering. And once again, I pulled it home, and my mom started crying. And I will never forget the words that she said after that. I came inside. She's like, "You bought yourself a plastic coffin." And I was, and I was like, it was poetic. I couldn't think of anything funny to say or anything like that. And I was like, I felt the general concern, and I was like, she's probably right.
A plastic coffin. I was going to
Oh, it
say,
was so fast too.
coming across a fiberglass bodied CJ5 as a kid, that's
Oh,
that's
and that was
amazing.
I was only because we lived in Northeast Ohio.
Oh, because
So
everything
four-wheel
rotted
drive
away.
hardware was right down the road. They would sell those bodies nonstop because they rotted so quick up here from the salt. So I had like one of the originals, and the frame was garbage, and I learned immediately afterwards after buying it. It's like, oh, I'm gonna have to replace this now too. So still own the Jeep too.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
yeah.
It's pretty good. I don't have anything that I've previously owned.
I'm starting to become that guy that you thought about as a kid. I had this conversation with somebody else in the industry recently. Like when you're growing up, you see the guy that has all the cars in his driveway and parked in the garage. When the doors open, you see it, and you're like, "Man, that guy, you should really sell it to me. You're just doing nothing with it." And then as you get older, you start to realize you're like, "Oh, I'm becoming that guy."
Yeah. So, do you have any kids in the neighborhood that look at stuff and go, "Wow, I'd like to have that"?
I'm not sure if kids are the same these days, but I hope
True.
so. There are definitely. So I've got a side by side now, and I ride around on that, and they definitely gravitate towards that probably more than even the race Jeep or some of the other toys that we have.
Right. That makes sense. So then,
Yeah.
when you went into, well, let's explore the earlier years. You're you get the Monte Carlo
Yeah.
CJ5 somewhere
Yep.
in there, and how
I was. I
you were
think
already
both were
driving.
316 at that point.
Both
Yeah. So
60,
I've been driving for like 3 or 4 years.
right? But
You
now
know.
you're legal. You got the driver's license.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what did
And I get pulled over by the police and ticketed like within 2 days after getting my driver's license. Yeah. For street racing.
in the Monte Carlo or the Jeep?
No, no, of course, I was in my parents' borrowed car at the time.
Uh,
Yeah.
what
So
what was that?
within a month of my, it was dumb. It was just kids being kids. We were driving stoplight to stoplight next to each other on a 4-lane strip, driving past each other, making goofy faces, and just driving too fast and being kids. And the cop saw us and pulled us over.
And
and
wrote.
tried to say we were drag racing.
Oh, there
The
you go.
furthest thing from the truth, but it's a funny story now to look back on. I thought I was going to get murdered by my family at the at the time.
Right. I had a similar situation happen. Me and my one of my best friends growing up. It was shortly after he got his driver's license, though, and I'd already had mine for about 6 months. But
Yeah.
we had met some girls, and he jumped into the girls' car, and some of the girls jumped in with me, and then we're driving around, and we got stopped at like 11 o'clock at night, and then held until after 2 o'clock. They had us.
There's a lot of similarities in that story, except we didn't get held till 2 o'clock.
Oh,
But
we did.
the most, like, you could have like copy and pasted that into my story because it was very similar, and there might have been some, showing off and having too much fun.
The only thing that saved me, well, the girls got in a lot of trouble because it was one of the girls' parents' car, and then they got a notice that their car had been ticketed with
Oh.
somebody else driving, and seeing that we had just met them like a half an hour before, it didn't go real well.
Oh, no, I can see that.
Yeah, they tried to get us for exhibition of speed, and we ended up beating it. But
Yeah, it's a similar thing. You go into court and you talk your side of the case, and I think, we just got off with court fees. It was nothing big, I think they were just realized it was, boys being boys, if you will.
Yeah, things were a lot easier. I don't, I know that you're younger than me. This happened to me in the early to mid 70s, so we could get away with a lot more than anybody can get away with now.
Probably, yeah.
So then you graduate high school. You said you were senior class president.
Yeah, I was senior class president. I was pretty active with a lot of the classes and things like that. Advanced placement. So I had some college credits going into college. I was accepted to Ohio University and a few other ones, but I chose Athens just because I had some friends that went there, and the campus was beautiful. It was 3 hours away from home, so it was far enough that I couldn't run home if I if I got scared. So made the choice to go down there, and thankfully, studied business and came out with a couple degrees in business management, sports management, recreational management, and it immediately from there went right into four-wheel drive hardware. I was actually interviewing it right before I graduated.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
4-wheel drive, and that is right there.
Right in the same area.
Yeah.
Like if people, like, a lot of folks don't know, like, Northeast Ohio is kind of a hotbed for hot rodding and cars in general and off road. Jegs is not too far down the road in Columbus. Four-wheel drive hardware was right there in Columbiana, Ohio. TP Tools, which is like a national tool provider, is right there in Canfield. And the big one, Summit Racing, right down the road in Talmadge.
Right. So then, when you were in college, and was it just all about school, or did you participate in any sports then?
Oh yeah, I was vice president of the Ohio University water ski team, if you could believe that, Rich.
Wow.
Yeah, I was the safety captain. Did that, and then
A safety captain.
yeah, I did some intramural volleyball, and I tore my rotator cuff, which is the coolest story I can say I ever did in college.
All right, let's hear it.
No, it's just how tough of a guy you got to be the guy that does a partial tear on his rotator cuff playing volleyball of all things. But yeah, I was on the Snowcats, so we did a lot of snow skiing as well, and yeah, a little bit of intramural stuff here and there, and then outdoor pursuits. So we would take a lot of kids that never went camping or backpacking or canoeing and things like that, and we would take them on trips. So I got to do a practicum in that.
Okay, so then, were you in scouting at all, or just FAA?
I was growing up, but I don't want to speak negative of scouts. We just didn't have a really good program where I grew up. It was more classroom based, where I would rather be out doing the actual activity, and I think that was why I didn't really follow through, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, that's different than where I grew up. We were always out.
No, I've seen some of the California scouting, and I was like, man, I wish we had that.
Yeah, I think I was 9 years old, and I went on my first Well, they called it. I got a 50-mile patch, but they didn't have patches, hiking patches, or for
Yeah,
more than that. I think we went out for like 7 days or 8 days and did like 10 miles a day.
10 miles
So
a day. That's legit for a kid. Yeah.
yeah, and I had to carry my own shit. My dad wasn't going to carry it for me.
Yeah, and you guys have real hills out there too.
Yes, mountains.
Exactly.
And now we that same area we wheel in. That's Fordyce area. Hmm.
Oh, is it really? Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be beautiful to hike.
yeah, absolutely gorgeous. So then in college, you're God. It sounds like you did all sorts of sports across there. Were you in a fraternity or anything like that, or
No, Athens, we had it was almost like kind of I don't want to say like people look down at it, but it was almost like a joke sometimes with fraternities. It was really good for networking, and I look back and I was like, yeah, you should probably have done that. But it was more like um, the joke was, we don't pay for our friends, we pay
ah,
for our beer,
yeah, there you go.
and it was kind of like a us versus them with the fraternities and sororities where, like I said, looking back, I think it probably would have been beneficial career wise, but no regrets. I probably had the same experience with club sports and other things that you could get from that.
Right. Okay. And you said you're a business major and sports business
Yeah,
or
sports.
sports.
So it's a business management, sports management, and recreational management were like parallel classes. So
Okay.
if you looked at the actual curriculum required for each of them, it was basically exactly the same. So I basically, my last year, talked to my advisor and said, well, if I just take some of these electives over here and some of these from here, I could have the same degree. And he's like, yeah. So I took some canoeing classes and some, sport classes, and I had bowling for a class, and yeah, it got me, got me that.
Canoeing for a class, huh?
Yeah, it was a pretty awesome class. I lost my glasses one time, but yeah, it's college. You got to learn. You got to figure out the where the fresh air is, and I definitely did that on picking classes.
Yeah, I guess so. I did my canoeing. I actually taught rowing and canoeing and sailing um, through a Red Cross program and scouting program in San Francisco at Lake Merced.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it was. Except the winds.
Yeah,
You get across the lake with the rowboat, and then you have to
yeah.
row back against the wind. It'd
Oh no, yeah.
take you like 20 minutes to get there and like 3 hours to get back.
I'm familiar. I live on a lake now, and with pontoon boats pushing in the wind, I can only imagine what that would try to be like, especially on a windy day.
Yeah, bad.
Yeah.
So then, how did you, with that background, how did you end up in the four-wheel drive industry? I mean, that you're applying for a job, that's I guess it's business management. You were looking at that as a possibility.
I was getting out of college. I was terrified because I didn't have any sort of job lined up, and it was like I think it was basically a month before I was graduating, and I just got to find something for the meantime. And I saw that Four Wheel Drive had sales positions opened up, just regular retail phone sales. And I knew enough about Jeeps just from working on my own. I was already replacing the frame on my CJ5 at that point and rebuilding the motor. The motor was literally in my bedroom when I left for college, and I had to hide it from my parents just so that they wouldn't find it and freak out. So, like, I had the knowledge. I knew that wasn't going to be a problem, and I figured having some college experience, I might be able to, parlay that into a bigger role pretty quickly. But I wasn't expecting to stay there, to be honest with you. I had a few other things in the works, and I thought those would come into play, but went down, interviewed. Like I said, I think I left college on a Friday, got there midday, did my interview, turned around, drove back, and was accepted, immediately. And a lot of it, for you're basically starting at the ground level, so I won't say it's not hard to get in, but if you have that immediate knowledge of the vehicles, it was a good place to start. And if you're willing to work your way up, which at that point, I was a poor, graduate college student at that point, I was willing to do anything to kind of cover, a little bit of the debt and maybe six-pack or two here on the weekend.
Or two or three.
Yeah. Taking a knife to a gunfight sometimes, yeah.
So, how long were you? How long were you at that in that business or that
Four-wheel
company?
drive hardware.
Yeah.
I was at four-wheel drive for 5 years, but I wasn't in sales that long. So I think it was the second month that I was there. I was like number one in sales. So I think I caught a foothold pretty quick, and thankfully I started bouncing around positions there. So after doing that, I started training the entire call center. Um, I want to say within a year. So I started training all sales, all technical staff, and customer service. Once I started doing that, I transitioned into doing more quality control. So if we had parts that would come in and there was problems, like if a broaching was off when on a gear set or something like that, I would go in and do an evaluation on it, quarantine the product, check it, make sure if not, send it back, and get resolution via that. And they just kept lumping jobs on you. Like when they realized, like, oh, this guy could carry a few jobs. It was like, oh, have him run the calls or have him run the showroom as well. So I started running the showroom on top of doing those two things. And yeah, eventually I went and worked for a mutual friend of ours in the internet department, Kelly Young. So
Right.
I was doing internet data management, helping build the website, which eventually transformed into a merchandising role, which it was pretty neat because you were just managing the vendors at that point, which in sales and all that, that's the place where you kind of want to be. You kind of want to have those relationships. So if you have something they have a question about, or, you want to have that immediate contact so you know what's coming out and what you should be offering. That's the first line is the merchandiser, the person that, controls the line, if you will. And it was after, I think, my second KOH trip that I ran into Dave and Greg out there. They were working the event, and they're like, what is this kid from Ohio doing here? And I think the line I used on them was like, yeah, this is your guys' job, but this is what I do. And it's set. And I think that line, when I joked with them about it, I was basically brought in to do new brand management at that point. So any new brand that was going into four-wheel parts or four-wheel drive hardware, uh, for the truck and Jeep side, I was in charge of,
So,
which was pretty neat.
so did Trans own
Four-wheel drive, yeah,
at that
yeah.
point? Okay.
They acquired them right when I was starting. Right, I want to say 2006. They had a basically a couple of gentlemen that were working there full time, working with the sales staff, and kind of angling them in the direction they wanted us to take. And of course, it was a crazy time because the housing market was basically collapsing. Everything was going nuts, but Jeep owners, same as Harley guys and everything else, they were still buying parts. Our business was still strong. My commission checks were pretty solid, so I had no complaints there.
Okay. So that was 2008, 9, 10, somewhere in there.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here I thought I knew you earlier than that. I guess not.
No, so I think the first time we met was probably and meeting. It was in passing almost, but it was Dayton, Tennessee, at a rock crawl. I was helping Kelly out with her We Rock team
Okay.
for stock class, and that's the first time I met you guys.
Okay.
But I was still, I was just the guy sitting on the sidelines filming stuff and taking it all in and trying to understand what the heck is going down here on this hilltop in Tennessee. That was an awesome event. I'm like, I say it every year. I'm like, I want to go back and see that again. Maybe
Especially after
participate.
hours. We don't
Oh,
do
it didn't
those
even
after
matter
hours
though.
anymore.
Yeah, the after hours were fun and all of that, but like legitimately the competition and everything was in front of you. It was like
Right.
you have like it was like surround sound off road or surround off road, if you will, because you just look to the right and there's a guy flopping over and there's another guy running this line, and all the courses were filled, and Wes Keene is jumping his rig at the top and blowing out the drive shaft, and you're just like, what the heck am I experiencing here? I think you had two DJs at that point calling different sides of the course, whichever was, drawing the most flavor at the moment.
Yeah, we still try to give a sensory overload, But it was a
Oh,
lot
it's definitely
easier.
that.
It was a lot easier back then when you had, you know, thousands of people
Yeah,
watching and you had, you know, 40, 45 cars competing,
and
like we
gallons
do on the
upon
West
gallons of
Coast, we had
moonshine.
used to
Yeah,
have on the East, but yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's pretty
And
wild.
that was a really good time. It was a really good time. That was at night, lights, everything. So it was a pretty special time.
Right. Now we have lights there and we don't have to run generators. We have big LED light poles that the Khazars put in.
That is cool.
Yeah. So then you're at Four Wheel Hardware, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
the name of the company. Okay.
But I was
I get
flying out like
confused with them
twice
all.
a month to Compton to help with merchandising. So I would be going in to do brand new brand evaluations and going to all the truck fests. So I was flying to Hawaii in 2011 when there was a tsunami hitting from Japan. It was the start of the whirlwind of travel and chaos.
And what was that like? I mean, you were relatively young then, so you were still what, mid
I
20s?
was Yeah, and it's not like today where you can just plug in an address on your phone. My first trip to Compton, I'm lost, 100%, and I'm using MapQuest directions to get me there. And I got off the 405, and I'm going to Compton. I know where I'm going. I'm trying to find the 91, and I start passing these, road signs, and they're showing all these signs. I'm looking at. I'm like, oh no, I heard this in a rap song. That's Crenshaw. I don't want to be on Crenshaw. I don't know. That's bad. Let's turn around. So yeah, I had to regroup, try to find the 405, the get up back on the 405, and find my way there. But yeah, it was interesting because it's not like today, and somebody else was making my travel plans for me, so I would be taking like crazy flights. Like I took a flight from Hawaii to Atlanta, and it was a red eye, and I'm on a plane with a bunch of kids that are going off to basic training in Fort Bennington, and they're all crying, and I was like looking at them, I'm like, I won't buy you guys alcohol. I'm sorry. But yeah, it was a heck of a learning experience, and that's like the sales side of it was so much fun because like Dave, the guy that runs merchandising, I think he still does for Full Parts, but his knowledge in hard parts, Dana Spicer, was tremendous. But yeah, the sales side of it was very interesting because you're talking to people that breathed it, and that you know their 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 entire life, the financial livelihood was based around their knowledge of the products. So Dave, the one guy that I knew from who was running merchandising at that point, I was listening to talk to these Hawaiians and like telling them, like, he's like, oh, this, and he's basically a Dana Spicer book in his head, and he was just rattling off numbers, and I was so impressed. And the more you run into those people in this industry, the more that you find like, okay, this guy gets it, this guy breathes it, this guy eats it, and you want to, I don't want to say emulate, but like you understand the lifeblood of it and the people that you want to be around. It's not just the guy that calls the shots or anything like that. It's the guy that actually knows what he's doing. And there's a reason why he's where he's at.
Right. That makes sense. So then how long you said you were there for 5 years?
I was there for 5 years. It was a crazy time, but it was a good one at the same time.
And what was your next step after that?
That's where we, I think, officially met. Was JKS Manufacturing in Alliance, Nebraska, back when Jim Nolet, the inventor of the quick disconnect, when he still owned the company before he sold it.
Okay. And then that
And
was, I think, I want to say that I don't know if we talked first on the phone or we met at Moab.
I want to say we might have. It was either on the phone or it was at the Hammers.
Okay.
Or it might have been like one after the other, where maybe we talked a little bit when we were at the Hammers. And I gave you a business card and you called me.
Okay.
But I was set up there at the Hammers. I want to say it was the same year that I was racing, which is even funnier.
Oh, and you were racing at KOH?
Yeah, I was racing stock class, so that was my first year racing stock class.
Okay. And then after that you came and raced Dirt Riot.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I had two goes at KOH before I realized that you should stop hemorrhaging money and figure this out first. I think that was like the like a lot of the first year to the second year to the third year. You see like they always talk about like people who finish the race, and it's like people that come the next year, and like the financial side and like the heartache of breaking a couple miles in, that had to cripple a lot of the people's spirits that were out there, trying to do the true everyman thing.
True, and that's one of the reasons that we built Dirt Riot. I mean,
Yeah, and
I looked at it. I actually looked at it. It was the same year that XRA stopped doing events, and I was like, okay, we're going on the road full time. We need something to do besides just the 9 rock crawls, because 9 rock crawls is not enough. And so we looked at it and said, well, let's start I'd already done off-road racing with Vora. I'd owned Vora for 4 years, Valley Off-Road Racing Association. So we said, let's try to pick up where the rock racers are at and go around the country putting on. I didn't want to do the same style as XRA because I just heard everybody, saying, oh, it was fun, but, I only got to race for 2.5 minutes, and drove 12
it made
hours.
a good show. I used to love watching the XRA stuff, but it was more like a monster truck show,
right?
Where it's like, you're done.
Yeah. So we went for, I wanted to do consecutive lap type things, and I thought that would help the guys that were racing or wanted to get into racing to learn how to race.
Absolutely.
Because everybody thinks they're fast. I mean, you go as fast as you can, and you're fast in your own mind. And then somebody goes blown by you
a lot
at
of money to do
30
that.
or 40 miles an hour faster, and you go, well, that guy's really fast.
Oh, yeah. Like, and that's the first thing you realize is, like, I know how to drive off-road. I've wheeled a lot of places. I've spanked that trail. And then, you spend a lot of money and you realize, like, how much better the car is. And you're like, I'm invisible. This is going to be easy. And then you see John Curry fly past you, and you feel like you're standing still. Yeah. That was a fun awakening. But, the same thing where, you're watching them pile back up and you're in low range because you have no power. Your 4 liters clapped out and you're just happy to be out there. And you're just watching all these big expensive cars on the side of the road and you count them up with your brother in the car with you. It was a heck of a first showing, but I still have the pride of saying that, I made it further in the hammers than Robbie Gordon did that year.
Is that the year he left Lance out on the lake
yeah,
bed?
that was the year he got choppered out.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So in your 2 attempts, did you ever finish KOH?
Of course not. No. I blew up the rear end the second year, a couple miles in, and so I had the opposite problem I think Mel Wade had that year, my first year, where the regulator for the battery was screwed up and it wouldn't keep the battery charged and we kept running out of battery.
Okay.
So we limped it past Martel and basically had just enough radio to get somebody out there to tow us back.
Wow. Okay.
And couldn't figure it out, and then ended up scratching our heads on it. And wasn't until Matt from Solid Axle flew out and was looking at it, and he's like, "Yeah, your regulator's wired wrong." And I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me!" Yeah.
Ooh.
So yeah, that was an expensive learning experience both times, and that's like, I was pretty close to being like, you know what, maybe this isn't for us. And then we found Dirt Riot, and that it, for what it costs just to enter an Ultra 4 race, we were able to do the entire weekend and have just as much fun, if not more. Actually, we had way more fun. And the amount of learning just from sitting around your truck and taking in what people are saying and learning what you're doing wrong, it paid off big time. Paid off really big.
Do you think that at the Dirt Riot races that it helped where, we were all bunched up? I mean, there wasn't as many as like at a KOH, and so that
it was like the early KOH. Like the first time I went to KOH was the first time Lauren won.
Okay.
And we pulled in the middle of the night, and we were parking next to these guys, and we had no idea who they were. Shannon Campbell starts his car up the next morning. We're like, "Hey, that's the Campbells. That's cool." And they would, we'd have conversations with them when they'd get back from pre-running. And then Matt, who I just mentioned from Solid, he was staying in our camper. So we had like a 4-person camper with 8 people in it. And rule number 1, no number 2s. And he introduced us to the guy next to us, and it was Lauren Healy. And and we're all like, yeah, whoever this guy is, I'm going to go over and talk to the Campbells. They're obviously going to win this thing. He's got an IFS car. Come on. And Lauren ends up winning that year with Brad coming in second, I believe. And that was just, it was just crazy that, you could be that close to those people. And, Lauren Healy was, an awesome rock crawler back then, but he wasn't the Lauren Healy that he was today.
Right.
And I think the next year I was hauling parts out for him in my backpack. And they were getting lost on the airplane because I checked them, unfortunately. And I'm running him out to the lake bed because he had some broken parts. So it's just one of those weird things where, scenarios and like you being at this random moment in time that seems pretty insignificant at the moment turns out to be pretty big. Like I was at Danny's garage when Dave came out with EMC.
Right.
I think you were there that night too.
Yes.
And I think, as I remember, I was talking with Creighton King, and one of my friends was like, who's that guy you were yelling at? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, I wasn't yelling at anybody. He's like, that guy over there. I'm like, oh, that was Creighton. We were just talking. We're loud.
You have to be loud at Danny's.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Because the volume in that place just gets louder and louder and louder as more barley pops are consumed.
Exactly. People were drowning on that 2-3 beer or whatever.
True enough. So then with coming and starting racing Dirt Riot, I need to ask, what was your funnest race on the races that you did?
It's hard to say because Crandon is an experience like no other.
Right.
Doing like the land rush start there, we were finishing up, and I remember the first time we were there, like Brad Lovell shows up late. We were finishing up our practice laps and we were getting off the course. And I think you were radioing to me, like, get Brad off the course. We don't have course anymore. And I go over to the official and he's like, oh, that's Brad. Nobody cares. He can do whatever he wants here. And I'm like, I can't argue with that.
Yeah. Cause he was racing Pro Tour lights or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll just tell Rich, no big deal. But that, and then Sturgis, and I don't even know how to say this. The ones that suck the most, honestly, are also the ones that I enjoyed the most. So the Cape Horn Bridge race, where we were up to like 3 or 4 in the morning putting the car back together, and just barely making the race, didn't have lockers. I think we broke a throttle cable, blew out a tire. It was just an awful showing for us. Was probably one of my favorite races. The alternator went out on our box truck on the way home, so I had to stop. And thankfully, my coworker with me at the time was, still level-headed enough and had enough sleep to replace it on the side of the road to get us home. But there was always races, and there was always things that popped up like that. The fan going out on us at Sturgis, pulling in the pits, and having Sean Rance Sr. come over and like hop on it and like help us fix the transcooler fan to make sure that it turned back on so we could finish the race. A lot of those things, like the moments where you're sitting there, you're like, this sucks so bad. And I look back now and I'm like, that was pretty cool,
It is amazing how everybody comes together.
Yeah. When we had the flat tire at Roush, or no, it wasn't Roush, it was AOAA.
Yep.
We before we learned that tire pressure is a big deal when it comes to sliding in the rocks. We had a flat tire. We get into the pits, and before I could even get my seatbelts off, I felt the jack, and the vehicle going up, and they're like, stay in the car. And I was like, this is great. Yeah, they're pulling off my spare, slapping it on, and, slapping the hood and telling us to get out of there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And that's some really, like, the camaraderie, the people, Tim Diekman, Matt and Kim, some of the East Coasters on those races were so, like I said, just sitting around talking to you, shooting the crap with them. And I think that's how I learned roundabout that I was running too low of an air pressure was, talking after that race saying, I don't understand what's wrong with these tires. I've never had issues with them. And they're like, well, what's your tire pressure at? They look like they're, barely got tire pressure in them. And I was like, I'm around like 15 pounds. They're like, oh, you should add tire pressure. You're going to slice the sidewalls all day long out here with those, I'm like, Well, good to know now.
Right, because
So
that's one of the things that a lot of guys we didn't know. I mean,
yeah,
when you were trail wheeling, you always aired down. So
yeah.
you know, you go out and
And I
watch
felt
the
like
desert
15
racers.
psi was aired up. I'm like, there's
Yeah,
too much air in these tires.
exactly.
And I heard people say that, like, you don't want to, mess your sidewalls up, but I figured 15 was enough, and sure enough, you if anything, you go up more than you think, and then add some more, and then you start floating those corners, and it slides a lot better, and you're like, okay, there is a method to this, and it's like I said, it was one of the things that just sitting around talking to people you take in, and how to keep water out of the motor, and wear a trash bag and do these things, and Rain-X on your helmet, and the little silly things, extra parts that you should have, and what you should be carrying in the car. And yeah, you got too much in there, and this is all you need. Don't worry about changing a flat. Drive it out. It's not that far, and you could limp on it. It's surprising what you pick up and you learn.
So let's talk some of the stories. You talked about being parked next to Lauren and the Campbells. What
Yep.
other kind of stories? Do you have any stories from the race day or things that happened that just were like surreal?
I think the biggest surreal moment was the night in Moab when Dave came out. And I thought he was on drugs or something, because I'd never seen the guy so excited in his life. I'm like, what is going on? He's like, we're going to do an everyman challenge. We're going to have stock class rigs. We're going to have, modded class rigs. We're going to do this, do that. And like immediately my reaction to it was, holy cow, which vehicle am I going to build? And how am I going to pull this off? And I almost tore apart like a brand new TJ that I had to make it happen. But I ended up buying Kelly's old We Rock rig,
Right.
painting it, having it painted black, and throwing our old axles underneath it, and just getting it done in time to change the transmission out 3 times before the race. But that was probably that. So when it comes to good race stories, that was the big one. I went through, I think, 3 transmissions my first KOH before we even hit the lake bed.
Wow.
And that wasn't from testing. One fell out. There was a pump issue on another. I overnighted one the week before the race just to get it installed. It. We get out there, and every time we turned it on, it was just pumping fluid out through the pump housing. So I'm in my buddy's garage in Bakersfield, Chris Bader. I can't thank that kid enough to this day for letting us take over his garage and basically run amok. And once again, we're on fumes. So I drove from Nebraska to Bakersfield, basically nonstop, no sleep. Picked up my brother in Denver so he could help drive a little bit. We take the transmission out twice before the race, put it back in, and both times, every time we turned it on, it would just pump oil, pump oil, pump oil. And eventually, we finally got it figured out, and sealed it up good enough that the pump housing wasn't leaking as much. Get to the
As
hammers,
much.
get it all unloaded, and start to do the little things. Dave Campa, a good friend of ours, shows up, starts helping. Bert gets out there, and they're running off to pit one, like they're gonna. And I'm like, these guys, I don't know. Hopefully we get to see them. But yeah, getting to the finish line and looking at my brother and just feeling like this immense accomplishment that, like, we actually made it to this. We actually made it to the start line.
So it's
That
the
that
adversity.
Oh, 100%. And then I remember immediately going into freaking shell shock and saying, oh, I think the rear lug nuts are loose. And he looks at me, he's like, I know the drive shaft bolts are. And that was our plan, was to get over King Shock Hill into the other side so we could tighten some stuff up and then, start on
Stop,
our
hide
way
behind
again.
the rocks out of the camera
Oh,
view.
yeah. Yeah. So it was, and that was, as much fun as that, as fun as to talk about that, the counting the cars on your way through the desert, at a snail's pace. I think we might have done 55 miles per hour in the flattest of sections. That's all that motor really had to give us till we got the Golan engine in it that it's got now, where we could actually turn some RPMs. But that it was so much fun, just being out there, and we're in the middle of nowhere. There's plenty of room around us, and this little blue Toyota comes in back and just smacks the crap out of us. And I'm like, why? And then you look behind you in the rearview mirror, and he's waving at you, and it's like, yeah, he's having a good time too. Yeah.
But he just wanted to know that a Toyota had caught a
Oh,
Jeep.
no, yeah, exactly. He's like, oh, we're racing. Okay. The,
Rubbing is
the
racing.
funnier part, yeah, the funnier part, and I don't know how many EMC guys you talk to, getting into the rock sections and seeing the chaos unfold in front of you. Granted, like most of these guys, and myself included, like, we know rock crawling, most of us have wheeled in a lot of places, but you put that helmet on and you look in front of you and there are just cars flipped over in places. Like there was a car flipped over in Martel, and I'm like, I don't understand how you do that. How do you do that here? And it was like, soon as you get into the rock sections, it was just chaos. And then you get out into the flats, and everybody would drive past us. And then we get into the rock sections, and we pass them up. And then we get out into the flats, and everybody passes up. It was, I think, the only thing that we had going for us is we didn't have enough power to really screw up.
But not enough power to finish either.
Oh, it was not enough. Yeah, not enough electrical power. Unfortunately,
Oh, that was the
the electricals.
yeah.
Yeah, that was that year. The second year, I've never prepped a car better. I don't feel like I was more prepared for a race. I had a spare transmission, spare transfer case. I had everything except for spare ring gear. And what do? We blow up the ring gear.
Wow.
It was the biggest heartbreak ever. Like I said, I was I forget what racer I was talking to, but he's like, yeah, the car's fully prepped, and he was just sitting in he was pre-running the course and something else, and he's like, this car is ready for this race. I'm not gonna go out there and pre-run with it. It's turnkey, it's ready to go. I think it was Big Ugly Racing, and that was my goal that year when we were going out there, is to have something that ready. So Jim at JKS at the time kind of gave me free reign over the R&D section. Bless his heart for letting me do that because I was back there every night and just slaving away. I had spare shafts, spare this, spare that, and it was all stacked up, organized in my little tubs. And I felt like, what, we got a real chance at it this year, and we're gonna do our best to finish it. And the bottle pressure got turned up too high in the rear locker. And when we came out of the wash right before back door, we heard something pop. And what I didn't realize is the ARB line popped off the little copper line, kind of came undone.
Right.
Pumped a bunch of CO2 in there, pressurized the entire axle enough that the bellows blew off the axle, and then it just started pushing oil out. So by the time we got through the desert section and I got off the throttle, you just hear the ring gear diving into the differential.
Wow.
And so did my heart.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But yeah, that was one of the coolest races too, because we found some fresh air on the outside. Like everybody was riding basically on the hard pack. There's a center channel, and they were nose to tail, and it was terrifying because you kept seeing the amber lights in front of you, and you had to dodge them. I dodged out the one time, and I just saw like, oh, it's wide open air. There was just enough of a breeze that was pushing it west. So I dumped it down into second gear, I think, and just held it to the floor. I just started passing people like crazy. It was a rougher section, but I wasn't in the heavy dust. Just didn't know at the time I was dumping oil all over the back of my Jeep.
Yes, getting smoke in the rear end.
Yeah, sad day.
So then, after JKS, where did you land then?
So yeah, Jim ended up selling JKS. Had an opportunity to move to Michigan to work for BDS JKS up at that facility, but I grew up in the Northeast. I kind of knew what was going on there, and I had an opportunity to go work for Crown Automotive in Boston. And I never lived in a big city. Alliance was a town of, I believe, 9,000 and some change in Nebraska, and the town that I grew up here in Ohio was probably not too much bigger. So I was like, yeah, heck with it. I'm gonna go up here. I'll do marketing for them. It was marketing sales, so they were just a big enough company that you got to wear two hats. So I went up there and helped them with their digital program and got them on track for a lot of things, and learned a lot about stock aftermarket replacement parts.
Okay. And then you were there, what, a little over a year?
I was 2 years.
2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you went to work for Jeremy after that?
Correct. Yeah. Jeremy at Rockcrawler.
Right.
Hmm?
and then from there it was
Linux.
Linex, and you were
Yep.
with Linex for quite a while, weren't you?
5 years,
5 years,
correct.
okay.
Yeah, it was a awesome time. 500 franchises, and basically managed their accessory sales for the whole country as well as and then eventually just the West Coast. So I was teaching a bunch of guys that did a lot in chemical how to sling truck parts.
Right, because they had
But
a line of hard parts.
mhm. Yep,
Right.
but they had some dynamite accessory guys. I can't take any credit away from them. Like I always joked. I shouldn't say joked. I always told most of the franchises all I did was pass the knowledge I learned from the store before them onto them. Because there's guys that I look to this day that if you're gonna make a decision, Jim at JKS, I don't think I've met a better businessman in my life. But some of these guys at their Linex stores, their local franchises, they really had a lot to offer, and they were just really good people, and it was a community thing where it was the local guy.
Right. Not too many people know, but you're one of them that do. That we looked at buying a franchise at Linex,
Correct. Yeah,
and down
I
there.
was so excited for that too.
Yeah, me too. I really was at Corpus because I thought, we were gonna partner
Oh, there.
with Josh Jackson, and
Yep.
I thought, okay, once we get done with the rock crawling, this will be a nice business to step into. Don't have to travel as much and everything. And then that was one of the franchise owners that didn't know shit.
Oh yeah. Oh, and that's the unfortunate thing. You're plagued with that every once in a while through transfers and other things, but it definitely was a good opportunity that unfortunately didn't work out.
Right. He just the reason we didn't get into it was they had signed they had told the building owner that they were leasing from they canceled their lease, thinking that once they sold the business that whoever they sold the business to could step in and redo the lease,
Yeah.
and that was incorrect. The guy wanted at that point for us to buy the building at an astronomically high price for a beat up piece of property,
Yep.
and
Yeah. I
so it
remember
all
going
fell
to that
through.
building. Yeah.
Yeah, that was too bad.
He was the one guy in Texas selling a lot of undercoat though, just because of how much salt's down there, and the golf carts. I think on the local golf courses were using a lot of it. It was a interesting setup.
Yeah, they did do a lot of undercoat, um, and yeah, there was a lot of problems with that franchise. But we were going to get it for a steal anyway, but not without a building. It didn't make any sense. So,
No, no, absolutely.
and then we decided we didn't want to trade time for a paycheck again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
Plus, you got a boat. You got to take advantage of that.
yeah. The boat's changed our life.
It does. I think it's the old Thoreau line. It's well to have water in your neighborhood.
Yes, yes, it's true. So you're now at Summit,
Correct. Summit Racing. Yep.
and are you? Is that something that you can work from home, or do you go into an office?
Primarily I do work from home. So
Okay,
with COVID, it's still a privately owned company. So once again, you're in that heavy enthusiast base of people. They wanted to make sure that the staff felt safe, felt like their health wasn't being subjected to anything that they weren't comfortable with. So they allowed the majority of the staff that worked phones or in the office to work from home.
well, that must be nice.
It's very nice. It's a change of pace from Linux, where 3/4 of the time, I'm trying to get 70,000 miles on my corporate truck a year, plus rental cars and flights and everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, because it made it rough for that must have made it rough on a personal level, um, always being gone from your base.
Yes and no. So I think there's a want and a willingness to travel in everybody. And for me, um, I look so much forward to seeing other people out on the road like yourself. Like all of my friends from the water ski team in college, they would get regular visits from me. Like I wouldn't fly home on the weekends like a lot of other folks. It would just be, it's going to cost as much for me to get 2 tickets to fly there, fly back, than it would be for me to get a hotel for 2 more nights. So I would just stay wherever I was at, meet up with some friends, or drive over to Baghdad, Arizona, and see one of the coolest races I've ever seen when you guys had that rainy event there with Dirt Riot. Or even the Congress event where there was wet and people were getting stuck in mud. I think Jeremy had to get craned out because he hit the deep end back there that year.
Yep.
But yeah, I took advantage of, keeping up with a lot of folks that I knew from the industry, that I knew from college, and just friends.
So you've always had that kind of wanderlust for travel as well, to keep moving.
And even now I'm building an expedition rig that, is going to double as my daily driver, and, might even tow the Jeep around a little bit if I feel like it can do it.
Nice. Yeah, I've
Or say Jeeps, because, once you have one, you got to have all of them.
True. Or the UTV.
Or the UTV, yeah.
What I found
or the boat,
is,
all
or
of
boat.
Yeah.
I've always been, I don't know if you call it restless, but I love to keep moving.
Oh yeah.
And
there's something to chasing that white line and like making another mile and getting to where you want to go and exploring, and some of the trips, nobody else would do them just because time. And I was like, that's the one thing that I'm going to take the most advantage for, just so I could actually experience it. And I'm not going to drive, the 91 down through California or whatever. I'm going to take the Pacific Coast Highway. Or if I'm going to be in Oregon, I'm definitely going to drive the coast. I'm going to go from Coos Bay all the way up to Astoria.
right.
And a lot of other folks would just stay on the 5.
True. That's what we try to do when we travel.
Yeah.
In the semi truck, we can't do that as much.
No. What is the craziest road you've driven in that thing? Have you taken it across the $1 Million Highway yet?
Which is the $1 Million Highway?
It's from Silverton, Colorado through Ouray. It's gnarly. If you did, I believe I've been on that in the semi truck, but I think that there's a one that we going north to Goldendale, Washington. We were in the semi truck, and I said, there's a road across here that's going to save us a lot of time. And I start cutting across, from interstate to interstate. We're just going to cut across through this mountain range. And we drove like 50, 60 miles. And then there's this sign that says, 28-foot kingpin to rear axle. What? No.
Something like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh, shit. And I'm like, well, we're not too much longer than that. Yeah. So we, luckily we didn't have any traffic coming the other way on any of the turns, but we made it. And then, I decided to drive it going the other direction too, because it did save a lot of time.
That's a champion right there. I think about all the times driving, like the toters and things like that, and to flash to think of what you've done with yours, like getting lost at Cal Expo, doing an event there, and having to back up, or you're driving into LA to do this, and you have to park here and all that. I'm like, this is just normal life for Big Rich, and I have no idea how he actually pulls it off.
We were coming through Tucson, or going to the Tucson event site or something, and it was late at night, and we were trying to find a restaurant, and the restaurant was actually on the frontage road, and I went past the frontage road, and Shelly's like, oh, you got this. Just keep going. And then I see this like 15% grade sign, and I'm like, where in the hell in Tucson is there a downhill 15% grade?
Yeah.
So I stopped just before the hill, and there's a school. This is in the dark, right? There's a school.
Oh, yeah.
And there's something else on the other side. And there's a bunch of poles and road markers and signs and everything. And somehow I pulled a Yui getting through, going off the road, back across the road, off the road, through all these signs, and then headed back out to the highway without hitting a damn thing.
That's impressive.
And
Were you down by the college then, or?
no, we were south of Tucson, and
Okay.
I don't remember which exit it is. There was a steak restaurant there that we missed. Like I said, the frontage road, and it was taking us down. And it wasn't. I mean, I drove it later on in the daylight, and I was like, "Oh man, I could have easily have done this," because it was only, a quarter of a mile long. I mean, I could have coasted it, not hit, been.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of industry guys' stories, or even off-road guys' stories, where you get lost and you're pivoting your trailer around a telephone pole, or why is the scratch here? It's like, oh, I got a story for you. And I had one of those. I took a Jeep down to Quadratech, and they have those rounded old school overpasses, and if you're in a box truck or a big truck like yours, you can't fit two vehicles through there without scraping something. And of course, I hit the front edge and the leading edge on the box truck, and it felt like I ripped the whole box off of it.
Oh shit!
But it was only like a foot of damage, but still, it was enough to scare the crap out of you.
So I would say that there was a time I was in Cortez, and I was going to Randy Rod's, the transmission shop, before they had the new shops.
Sure.
And I was on the main road going through Cortez and had to make a right-hand turn to get down to where Randy's shop was at. And I'm trying to take the lane next to me as well. And I make the turn, and somebody's in the turn lane coming out of that street. And I look in the rearview mirror thinking, okay, I'm going to make this. And I realize that my trailer is up against the aluminum light pole. I mean, it's that close enough to where I think it's up against it. So I stopped. I just sat there while the lights changed. I backed up because people, went around me.
Sure.
Backed up, took more of the lane I took all the traffic lanes. And then people did not go into that left-hand turn lane on the street that I was going into, and I could make the turn. But at times like that, when you're in a semi-truck, it's just like, I don't care who I'm
it doesn't, you don't even
making
notice
mad.
It doesn't affect anything. I've accidentally backed into my ZJ with my box truck, and I was like, well, that's weird. Why is it chugging out? Usually it doesn't have a problem backing up just on the, I wasn't hitting the throttle. I was just letting it idle backwards. And it was at night. And then I look in my mirror and I see my ZJ going sideways. I'm like, oh, that's my Jeep, and I'm pushing it. That's why. Thankfully, it wasn't that expensive, and I fixed it pretty easy. But yeah, when you're in a big truck, it's, you know what, you got to work around me at this point.
Yeah, you just never know. And I mean, there's been so many instances like that. Going into in West Virginia, going to that race
in Cape Horn Bridge.
Yeah.
That was a fun one.
Chaos Park, I think they called it.
Okay, yeah.
I was parked in around behind the guy's house in the shop area. And while it only took me like 5 minutes to drive into it, to get out of that spot, it took me like an hour and a half.
It's no wonder how you and Shelly are still married with some of this.
Oh,
she just sit in the back and she's like, just do what you got to do, Rick.
She'll go, how can I help? And I say, don't say anything.
Don't make any gasping sounds. Just close your eyes and put on your earpods. Yeah.
Yeah, we were going through, I want to say it was Arkansas. Of course, I could be wrong with that. And I wanted to pull off because there was a restaurant and there was a donut shop that was closed. And I thought, okay, I'll just pull in here and then I'll swing around the building to get out. Well, there was no swinging around the building because...
There was no around the building. Yeah.
Oh, no, there was.
Oh.
But what they had done is they had put the garbage dumpsters back there. And they
keep people from doing what you're doing, yeah.
And so I got out to try to even move those, but they were sitting on the dirt and they were too full. And so they were like kind of sunk down into the dirt. And I could not get that thing negotiated forward or backwards at the point that I was at. And people came out from their house next door and were sitting on lawn chairs watching me for like 45 minutes.
We do that at the boat ramp
Yeah.
down by my house. We have a boat launch, like, I don't know, like a drive or 4 iron away from my house. And you could hear it some days where people there's marriages ending right after they bought that boat.
And I remember just going, okay, to hell with this. And I just backed it up off the curb, over the curb stops, out into the street. I just like, to hell with it. I don't care if anybody's coming. I can't see. I'm just backing up and getting out of here. And did.
Yep.
And then went on down the road and found a better place to park.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. So
Yeah.
what else? What's in the future?
Well, hopefully we'll get back racing now that this COVID craziness is subsiding and you're starting to travel a little bit more without masks. Thankfully, I have a good friend that has a cabin up in Alaska, so I've been helping him with that. So I'm going back up in a few weeks to spend 10 more days up there, work on the cabin, explore around up there, hopefully do some overlanding in the future, and get the boat on the Denali River and kind of see what we can't find that route as well. So I'm starting to appreciate and understand more about I don't know. I'm starting to heed my own wisdom, I guess you would say. But every time that somebody asks me about getting into off-road racing and things like that, the things that I tell people are more the things that I'm doing now. So do what still makes you happy, and if it makes you, if you're starting to get frustrated or you feel like it's just not working your way, you got to evaluate and figure out, is the the juice worth the squeeze. So we'll probably do more local events. I'm gonna keep a couple bucket list races on my schedule and hopefully do them one day. I want to do the Mint. I would love to race, Mexico one day. If I could race Mexico before I die, that I'll be a happy boy. And then do some more of those, go back up to Crandon, race up there again. And now that I'm working for Summit, it's I'm surrounded by guys that just dwarf me in motor knowledge. So I'm gonna build some pretty stupid rigs here in the future.
Sweet. That
Yeah,
sounds awesome. And
yeah.
what part of where's he at in Alaska?
He's north of Fairbanks, so we're central Alaska. It's real close to the Circle Hot Springs Resort.
Okay.
Yeah, you're basically 30 miles away from the Arctic Circle.
Wow.
It's amazing. And for anybody listening, don't go to Alaska. It's awful. It's what everybody says, and just leave it to us because no, I'm just kidding. It's beautiful. Everybody should experience it. And outside of, Los Anchorage, as they call it, you should experience the less seen parts. It's completely opposite of what you think, and it's a beautiful opposite.
Yeah, I've only been on the Kenai Peninsula. Well, Kenai Peninsula and Anchorage. We flew in when my son lived there in Kenai, and we flew into Anchorage, and then did the road down to there and all of the things to do between Homer and Anchorage. But I do want to do the rest.
Yeah,
I want to do it in the winter.
They have a new portion of the one. I think it's there's two roads that go north, and they're both evading my memory right now. But I want to do the one that's going all the way up. So they extended it a couple years back. So we're planning on driving up, I think maybe later this summer with one of the vehicles with a bunch of materials. We're dropping off a diesel truck up there. And I'm excited to do that. And who knows, I might be able to talk him into going up a little bit further.
Cool. So you you said you might get into some overlanding or exploring. What kind of vehicle?
Yeah, I actually did a little bit when I was in Nebraska. I was building out a Jeep Liberty,
Okay.
of all vehicles. But no, I got a little 2000 Chevrolet, or not Chevrolet, GMC 1500 Sierra.
Okay.
So just going to do a simple rack assembly, soft rolling cover on it, airbags. I work for, the best place to get parts. So I'll be tuning it up and making sure that it's ready for another 140,000 miles or whatever it's got on it now.
So do you go through the catalog and then put Post-it notes on it, on the
Oh, come on,
pages with all
Rich.
the stuff?
I'm new age these days. I keep it in I got a spreadsheet.
A spreadsheet.
Got a
Oh no,
spreadsheet. I've
I
created a
hate
budget.
spreadsheets. That's
I
Shelley's thing.
After racing, you realize that spreadsheets are your friend. And like I said, that's the one thing I get to telling everybody. I'm like, you start a budget, and then you multiply that by 4, and then you add, and then you double it, and then maybe that's how much you're going to spend. And don't skimp on the safety stuff. And
True.
that was the one big thing, and the one thing I used Summit most for was a lot of the safety and a lot of the plumbing stuff, because we're doing it all last minute, and thankfully we got our parts within like 2 days, no matter what we were ordering. And I was like, you know what, these guys are all right.
And so then when the opportunity came to go to work there,
Yeah, it only took 3 tries, I think. So I was trying to get a job there straight out of college, just like I was at 4-wheel drive. And a few years back, I had an opportunity to potentially work there, and somehow it didn't work out, unfortunately. But this last time, I guess my resume was up to snuff enough that
nah, you
they
know
gave
what
me
it
a
was?
glance.
It was
They're
my
like, oh,
reference.
yeah, oh, yeah,
It's when they called me and asked me for a reference on you. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. I told
Well, I
them straight
appreciate
up,
it.
if I had a position for you and could afford you, you'd be working for me.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. You don't have to lie for me. It's all right, Rick.
No
Yeah.
worries, no worries.
No, like I said, it's one of those things that I grew up 20 minutes away from this place, and you never realize how big of a, I don't want to say big, but how awesome of an organization is sitting in your backyard the whole time. Like, you go into the showroom and you're just mystified by, you got race cars on the ceiling and every single piece of candy that, the motorhead wants sitting out in front of you. And yeah, it took me, what was it, 16, 17 years in this industry to make a full circle, come back and work at the one place that I wanted to start working at initially.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And you see that as your hopefully your final resting place or what?
Oh, absolutely. It's very similar to the job that I was doing when I left Transamerican, where you're really in control of the truck and HD market and diesel market. So I get to do a lot of things that directly reflect the sales and the future of the products and the offerings, and all the things that I circled in that catalog growing up are now the things that I'll be bringing into the company, and hopefully creating a lot more success with.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, is there any other stories that you can think of that you want to share with us?
I just feel like we should be on bar stools when we have this conversation.
I always say around the campfire.
I can't, yeah, but like, I can't imagine how many people, when they get off the phone with you, are like, man, I wish we were drinking beers right now, because it was a fun memory lane. And like, the things that we left out, like the other, like, I feel like I could talk to you for a week about some of these stories. Being Roush Creek, my friend got to drive around Shannon Campbell to pre-run the course with, because it was raining and he didn't want to get his car dirty. And there's like all these other things that, like, they're just popping into my brain right now, and I'm just like, no, maybe another time. But maybe that time will be at around a campfire, like you say. But I'll keep doing the photography side and showing up to events and seeing you and Shelly out there and keeping track of it that way. And hopefully we'll drag around the truck and trailer at the same time and do a couple of them. I still want to do an East Coast rock crawl. I still haven't done one. I always say that I want to, but who knows? Maybe this year is my year.
Well, look at the schedule and come on down to Tennessee.
I want to. That's the one.
Yep, that would be the one.
I gotta figure. I gotta talk to some of my friends in the We Rock world and figure out how I can make my Jeep a little bit better for that. I think we're a little too big for it. We'll have to lower her down and get that center of gravity a little bit lower.
Tuck them in a little bit. Yep.
But no, I appreciate it. I enjoyed these podcasts driving the last couple of years and traveling and listening to them, and never thought that I would be invited on here to share the experience.
Well, we all have one thing in common, and that's the love of the off-road industry. And
we all like Shelly. She's pretty awesome.
Yep, that's true. That's true. She is very awesome. I should have listened to her years ago when she said, you need to do a podcast.
Oh, 100%. Like, I was going through the list of people, and like every time I was like, wow, like Rod Hall's granddaughter. I'm like, that'd be pretty awesome to have that conversation, or this person is like every single one you're going through, and you're like, yeah, I get it.
And it's interesting because I've got so many names on my list, and every week somebody sends me, I'll get 3 or 4 recommendations to add to the list. And then I try to call people, and everybody wants to do it, but it's finding that time, or, well, I got something in the works I'd really love to talk about, but I'm going to need a month, that kind of thing. And so it keeps going. And, I always look for, not just the big power names that everybody knows. And some of those guys that had the big power names don't really want to be on. I mean, I've only had a couple that say, I had one guy say, no, I don't want to be on it. Another one said, no, Rich, I'm out of the industry now. I don't want to share that part of my life. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. And another guy, oh no, let my friend do it because he talks better than I do. And it's, I don't know, what to say and all that kind of stuff. And I think we make it pretty easy. But and then there's others, it's like, I don't know, maybe I'd want to tell my truth too much, and I'd hurt too many people's feelings. And so I can understand that, and
I can see that.
So that there's some that people are going to go say, why haven't you had him on yet? Well, there's 4 possibilities there where one of those guys that you're wondering about, somebody might be wondering about, is under that.
Yeah.
So
chances are they just haven't made it on yet.
Right. Chances are.
Yeah.
But I have a long list.
There's so many great people. Like I've got to interact with so many, and the randoms that you run into when you're out there, at events or, competitions, or just, even SEMA. Like, never would I thought like, oh, I get to meet Dan Henderson, the Ultimate Fighter guy, on the trails of Moab.
Right.
There's random occurrences of people that like also enjoy, something I get to do for a career. I always said that, there's two really important things when you do a career that you love. There's 2 important phrases. One is, if you enjoy what you do, you never have to work a day in your life, which is true. But the other one is, you got to separate work and play.
True.
So even if work does seem like play at times, a dream sometimes could turn out to can be a nightmare. And thankfully, I've been able to do that well enough that, the business is still the business side, and the fun side is still fun.
Perfect. That's a great place to end this.
Wow.
I like that. It's a nice segue.
Thank you.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for coming on and spending the afternoon with us after work there, and discussing your life and off-road. I know that we'll run into each other more in the future. And
absolutely. You guys are stuck with me. I'm going to keep popping into your lives.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Thank you for listening to Conversations with Big Rich. Please let your friends know about this podcast. Let us know what you think of Conversations with Big Rich. Please forward ideas to me, contacts of those that I should attempt to interview. Leave a rating on any of the services you found us on. We look forward to your comments and ideas. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and grab all the gusto you can.